Well, good morning, everybody, or good evening by the time this plays out on Goodera at the Karma Summit, and our wonderful audience has a chance to listen to an amazing array of women with 100 years combined experience here. I'm just so privileged to have this conversation with all of you at a time when I think women anyway, we love to talk. And apparently we use 50% more words if we take the sum total of the words we read, speak, and think. So anyway, we love to talk. Let's talk about a directed topic that is going to help all our audiences. So this topic of one step forward, two steps back that Goodera has given us as a title for today's session. I think the gender situation in the COVID divide is easily surmountable if you look at the positivity in it, and who can give better positivity than all of you. So first of all, thank you, Goodera, for doing a great job on helping us all do well by doing good. And also, I know that you do a lot of work already in buying PPEs and spending millions of rupees on helping the actual people on the ground, but helping people to have a better mindset is just such an important thing, isn't it? Because all of us are now with our little oximeters, but we also have to look at our mind meters. And I'm very happy that you've given us this opportunity. So the Karma Summit is a wonderful way to bring good back. Thank you, Goodera. This panel has a doctor, a banker, a UN Woman Ambassador, a diversity tech leader. You know, it beats Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Move over, Lakare. We're ready to give you a lot of well thought through practical insights, wisdom, and maybe just some tips from our own lives, right? And from what our organizations have been doing. For me to moderate this is special because you will become the role models for us for 2021, because we've been able to, as a company, running the Champion Woman movement, been able to touch the lives of 130,000 women and girls in India, running programs on self-confidence building, emotional strengthening, and leadership goal setting with mindfulness as the very fulcrum of the way that women should and can work in India. So thank you for all of that. Let's co-create the new normal. And I thought we should start with the four panelists and me greeting our audience with our Each for Equal activity, right? It was already set this year for Women's International Day. And so I guess right hand above, left hand below. And then, so hello, everybody from this amazing, talented team.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
So listeners, take notes. If you can leave this session with one thing to stop doing maybe, and one thing to start doing, this would have been a time we all spent really well. So the organizations that you have all been, that we have represented here have been instrumental in bridging the gender gap, which is the purpose and mission of life for many of us on this panel, right? About how can we narrow this workforce gender gap, which is the crying need of our nation and of the world currently. So I'm going to start off with a quick question, actually to every panelist, if you don't mind. Maybe Susan, you being the only non-Indian on the panel, we will give you the privilege of starting our session off.
Oh, thank you.
We Indians are very nice, Susan. So
I know that.
Thank you. And you've only been 3 weeks with India, but you're going to learn to love it. So the question is to everybody, but Susan can start off. So what is your organization's role, the UN Women role in India in communicating gender issues? And can you give us one of your major gender-related priorities? And then when it's the next person, each one can give maybe a different gender-related priority that you have been ensuring for the betterment of the world. Over to you, Susan.
Thank you very much, Ranjini, and also for your lovely warm welcome today. So UN Women, it's the entity within the UN that focuses specifically on women's equality. So really, we look at a range of different areas, But our role globally is to support the member states of the United Nations achieve, set goals for more equality between the sexes, but also to achieve those goals. So really that's what we do here in India as well, is support the government's endeavours to create an equal and just and participatory society. So one of the examples of that is that we work on second chance education for girls who, for various reasons, have had to leave school. And often, maybe they got pregnant early or they weren't allowed to go to school to finish their schooling for various reasons. So, I'm really proud to be associated with this, actually, because if we can help girls finish school, it opens up so many more opportunities for them. So that's one of the things that we're doing here in India.
Great. Education, super important.
Yes.
Lavanya, would you like to share perhaps the similar thing from GenPact's angle and one major priority?
We look at it actually from two perspectives, right? One is from the corporate working woman perspective in terms of how do you bring in gender equality at leadership levels. And the other perspective that we like to look at it is again from a corporate social responsibility perspective. How do you try to bring in equality or equity, as I rather like to call it these days, in the sector as well? So as a priority, I think we have a couple of things that we look at, right? How do you even the slate? How do you even the starting point for people from a corporate standpoint? So for everyone, and the way I describe it is for everyone, if you're splitting a meal, but your financial backing is different, right? So you can have someone who's doing very well, you can have someone who's doing less well, and you can have someone who's doing poorly. But to expect them all to split that bill evenly is almost unfair. So therefore, the intent that we've sort of stepped out with is how do we create equity in everything that we run, whether it's for gender, whether it's for racial equity, and several of the other diversity initiatives that we're running. How do you even that playing field so that it's fair for all those that are participating? When we look at it from a corporate social responsibility standpoint, and there's several projects that we're part of, there are a couple of things I think that are important, right? One aspect, of course, is certainly education. The other aspect is the opportunity to build a life and a dignity of life with that education. So those are the two ends of the spectrum that we feel is important to always have in view, because the second leads to sustainability and the first leads to opportunity.
Right. Great. And Kritika, maybe your take on this?
Sure. Hello all. Very interesting question. Kaleidofin, it's like Lord Shiva and Parvati. As a strong believer, I always say each human being is a characteristics of a masculine partly and feminine partly. So we believe in complete equality within the organization. We are about 100-member fintech group. Just if you see the management co-founders, we have one man and one woman, absolutely equal. And we have ensured that percentage is almost pretty equal at every stage of any recruitment, or we want to give complete real opportunity, whether it's a man or a woman. So from the organization perspective, the gender divide is not very seen because it's equal, and we have never seen a problem on that, as well as extending the same policy to our customers. In fact, one step ahead, more than 95% of our customer base is women. When we are talking about financial inclusion, trying to reach out our formal financial services to the deeper districts within India, and we really believe, as Rabindranath Tagore says, woman is a builder. For a nation to be economically, independent, I just believe the kind of revolution energy that a woman has is far higher, and they are the building blocks of the nation. So with that kind of a resilience, that is seen in a woman, which is God's gifted, Kaleidofin is ensured to take up that quality and ensure that we are making these women customers not just save through our platform, but also more be self-reliant, be more confident, try to influence, I will talk about that a little later, on specific offering, how we are doing this. So this is one of our priorities. Just make everyone equal, and far more to the rural women who are anyway our nation's building block.
Fantastic. And Dr. Aradhana?
Yeah, thank you, Ranjini. First of all, privileged to be on this forum, and thank you for the warm welcome. We at the World Food Program focus on ensuring that food reaches every person equal to her or his requirement. And, in the most difficult of circumstances where the basic minimum requirement is also a challenge. And so at the World Food Program, our focus is on eliminating hunger from the world. But how can we do that if half of the population does not have equal access to food? And so our focus here then is to ensure that through our programs, whether it is food assistance, whether it is technical assistance to the governments to improve their food safety nets, whatever food is reaching the households gets to be divided equally among all the members as per their requirements. And so that's currently the focus of our, not just programmatic thrust, but also advocacy thrust, to ensure that not just men or boys, but women and girls equally get a share of what we are sending to their households as food. Thank you.
That's great. World Food Program is such an important aspect of what we need in the world. Between you and women, you'll lead the way. Genpact, Lavanya, I know that you have 3 pillars, and one of your very strong pillars is women's empowerment, thank God. So what are some of the things that you are doing now that could support women additionally during these challenging times? Is there a lesson for us all to learn from you?
So as I sort of mentioned when I talked about our priority areas, right? For example, when we look at education, and I'll just give you the example of a community that we're working in, we leverage the center of the community and the school to drive sustainable community impact, right? So the school looked at education, we looked at teacher development, we looked at library infrastructure, etc., so that we were providing equitable education to the children in that community, right? And that also meant educating the parents and elders of the community as well in terms of how it's important for both the boy child and the girl child, and the respect factor that needs to come in. Now we've arrived at a place where the pandemic has taken livelihoods away from many members of this community, and for education to continue, it requires us for us to be able to give the opportunity for work and livelihood. So in fact, that's one of the priorities we've taken this year, is that how do we look at giving women from this community the opportunity to build a livelihood. And it comes from training, it comes from giving the opportunity to build a business and providing the seed capital for that to happen. So that's one of the priorities that we have, and that's one of the ways to look at it. I think the other thing that's sort of, and it's a conundrum, I don't necessarily have the answer to this, but the other thing that we feel is important is to look at the impact, right? You have the woman who's now stepping out, working, trying to bring in income to her family. How much control does she really have over her financial independence? And I think that's another aspect that we want to look at, because for whatever it's worth, our society is built. It doesn't matter who the earning member of the family is, the man tends to make all the decisions, right? So we wanted to ensure that the women of these communities that we're working with are educated at least to the point where they realize the necessity of their own financial independence and their empowerment in being financially independent as well.
Right, great. It's such an important thing. So it sort of dovetails into Kaleidofin's ability, I think, to teach savings, create savings and financial discipline in women, right? So I'm guessing Genpact is working with urban as well as rural areas. Is that correct? Yeah. So Kaleidofin, do you want to come in, Kritika, to explain how has this pandemic impacted your client base? And is there some specific thing that you're doing that we all could learn?
Absolutely. Well, yes, the pandemic definitely had a great impact because when we are dealing with a customer segment that are in tier 5, tier 6 kind of a districts in rural, they might be having a small setup of shops right outside their house, or a very, very involvement of where customers are definitely required. And when you know the initial part of the pandemic months, especially the March, April, May, when there was a complete lockdown and a complete shut shop, it just lock, stock, and barrel. People had no clue. People have stopped meeting, and it's a huge impact on the smaller laborers. Where the jobs were completely cut, and even the small shop owners, everything is shut shop. Before I specifically address what has been the impact and how we address it, just want to throw some light on what has been our product offering. While most of you in the panel are aware, we are a neobank. What we try and focus is we help the customers to propel towards achieving their real life goals by providing intuitive and tailored financial solution. And there has been a significant focus on the informal segment of customers, because we believe that's where the lot of awareness will have to go, and they occupy majority of our population. And while microfinance institutions and various NGOs in the last decade have done a lot on the credit side of the business, creating them a self-help group and making them aware of various loans, why not take a tougher challenge? First, create a savings habit. And it's as simple. They do save in chit funds, they do save informally, but end up also losing because there is no trust or a formal financial support around it. When we understand the problem at ground level and we kind of developed deeper insights into their behavioral pattern, we went and understood over the last decade when it comes to how do they manage their finance, what do they do. That's when we started with a goal-based savings platform exclusively, addressing their benefits, and also ensure that we take into consideration what the problems that they face. You need to have a flexibility in the savings. I can't be rigid as a banker or a FD where you have a problem and you remove it, you have to pay a penalty, because they are saving in a very small pool and we can't over and above charge many charges. So we wanted to give a platform that also gives them the flexibility of save when you can, but continue to save because you need to achieve your goal and create that nudging and awareness continuously. So we have embedded our product with savings, credit, and also insurance, which is inbuilt. So during April and May, which is a peak COVID period of a complete shutdown, we did receive a lot of inquiries through our customer engagement. And most of the inquiries are like, is my money safe? What is the balance do I have saved so far? And when they heard that their money is saved far more than what they've actually put in, they clearly understood that yes, the money is not just safe, but it's also growing, and Collective is definitely going in the right path of developing that trust. There's an additional bond of trust. So one side, there has been an impact. The other side, we did not see many withdrawals of funds, barring a very handful where there was an emergency need, because our product is clubbed with an emergency credit line, which we try and through a product called Chi Score, to meet these sudden shocks, to tide over this short period of shocks. We kind of created awareness, and they went ahead and availed this emergency line of credit. So one side, the savings are untouched. The other side, using that savings, they were managed to get the emergency line of credit in a very, very short span of time.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful.
I think that has taken, in fact, we have developed 220,000 reports in the last 3 months, just understanding the customer needs, to arrive at this emergency credit line. So
great. Very important, because that's what I think Lavanya was alluding to as how can you sustain and scale things that you start out with. Okay, that's really lovely to understand from you. So maybe just again a question to everyone, but maybe again could we start with Dr. Aradhana on this? What are some of the unique approaches to equality and gender related programs that you have been applying at World Food Programme that others could learn from?
I think we begin with understanding the ground situation, unless and until we are clear about what exactly is the scale of inequality, where are the areas where women are losing out or where girls and boys are, not getting on the same path. Until we really understand these inequalities, we'll not be able to intervene in an effective manner. And so we begin with what we call as gender assessment. So that's the basis of our program. If we need to assist a population in a certain area with food assistance, we need to understand what is the pattern of food consumption within households. What are the sources of food that are available to the community? Are they available equally to the community? How much of the food reaches households? And then once it reaches households, how is it divided between members? And so this is the basic, the baseline on which we then build up our food assistance. Once the food assistance begins, we have to keep reinforcing messages that there has to be an equal division of the food, there has to be division as per the need, there has to be prioritization of certain sections. So we need more food and more, food geared to the needs of, say, pregnant women, lactating women. Are we really able to reach out to them as per their requirements? Are we really able to meet the requirements of young children's nutrition? And so these are the priority areas that we try to focus on. And not just that, then addressing the norms that actually are behind these inequalities. These are patriarchal norms which often, dictate that the woman has to eat at the end when she has actually served everybody in the family. But in poor households, it actually means that the woman ends up getting less than what she actually would need. And so uh, reduced meal consumption, sometimes even having to skip meals, actually affects her nutrition in the long run. So we need to convince families that it's not good for the entire family if the woman is not being fed equally or not being able to meet her food needs. So how can we do that? There has to be an assistance alongside it. Okay, if the family is not able to get enough food, what can we do to enhance it? So then, additional to the food assistance, we work on livelihoods so that there is some kind of a longer term sustainable food security. So it's a kind of a hand-holding approach which takes the family and the community together towards greater food security and sustainability.
Very interesting. So you're talking about a 360-degree approach, and you're involving all stakeholders
Yes.
to empower the woman. That's a great approach. Susan, how does it work when UN Women works in different cultures, and what can we learn from you?
So I think one of the really interesting programs we're doing here and in a number of other countries is called the We Empower Asia program, which is funded actually by the EU. But this program, and we work with the private sector actually, and looking at institutionalizing a number of principles called the Women's Economic Empowerment Principles. And these look at, because we know that if the private sector was able to address some of the gender norms that stop women participating equally, and they're the norms that I think our other panelists have already talked about the roles that women and men play within the family, they're actually globally, the economy would grow by another $2.9 trillion. So there's a huge economic benefit to everyone if women can participate in the economy more fully, and in the private sector in particular. So, some of this work is looking at how do we have more equality on boards so that women, and there's more diversity within boards, because again, apart from that being a human rights issue, it's also importantly an economic issue. More diversity can also create more wealth. So we look at that. We also look at what are the barriers for women's advancement within an organization. Is there some technical skills those women could have that would benefit their own rise within the organization? But we also look at women in supply chains to those private sector organizations. How can women get a fairer option for for their tenders, for example, so that they can benefit from that angle as well? So there are a range of different ways, including some of the policies, family-friendly policies. And indeed, I think the pandemic, one of the sort of lessons learned from the pandemic is that you can change some of these norms so that we can be more flexible in work arrangements. We can work from home, we can juggle some of the family responsibilities, both men and women. So that's one example of trying to reduce that gender gap within the private sector.
That's very interesting. And you're right about work from home, allowing more women perhaps to do the work that they were earlier a little not unsure about juggling. But it also seems to be the other way around, isn't it? Now there's conversations about women working from home, actually considering 25% of them even considering giving up work because they're working at home and from home. So there was a report I read about, I think it said about 352 minutes a day of unpaid work that a woman does at home, and there's a gentle 52 minutes that the man is helping her with. So what is your take on this? Maybe from a personal perspective, is there something that you could share that you've succeeded in leveraging this ratio of gender sharing work, both in the workplace and at home?
So thank you, Ranjini. That's such an important question, because you're right, there's both positives and negatives to this. And in fact, it has impacted on a lot of women badly, because they've had to reduce their amount of work that they're doing, as in their paid work, in favor of their unpaid work, which is the caring responsibilities that so many women have to do as part of the roles that norms tell us we need to play. So those gender norms are so strong. And so part of that is around changing men's behavior, so that they do pick up more of the slack there. It's absolutely crucial. And again, if I get back to that 2.9 trillion figure, that was the McKinsey Institute actually looked at this and said that these gender norms, which are often considered to be private and personal issues, actually have a massive public impact on ourselves as a nation or as nations. So it's really critical. And in my own life, there is no way I could do my job unless I had a supportive husband, which I fortunately do. And, you know, I have a job where I live in different countries. My husband is the linchpin. I've got 4 girls, and he basically looks after them, you know, cooks and cleans and makes sure they get to school, and he's amazing. And so we need more men like that, really, who are prepared to work in partnership with their wives or their partners to share that load, because that will both allow the man an opportunity to spend more time with his children and enjoy that, and it will also allow the woman to have more control over her own economic life.
Lavanya, tell us about a personal or a work situation, a specific real life story where you were able to enable better gender balance.
So it's interesting, at least in our sector, we reached an impasse where we started trying to figure out the impact that this was having on our on all the female colleagues across the organization. So there are a couple of ways of looking at it, right? What happened is there was a large degree of realization of the day-to-day struggles that families go through, and women go through in particular, as they manage the home and the work-life balance, right? Because now you have all these men that are sitting at home and they're seeing what's going on. They're seeing that the fact that kids need to be taken care of, meals need to be made, work needs to be done. And as it so happens, and I'm just at the risk of being slightly politically incorrect, perhaps, if you're a person with even a shred of conscience, you will take a step back and say, what can I do to help? Leadership in organizations started recognizing that their female counterparts and those female employees that were working for them as well, they started recognizing the struggle that these women were experiencing on a day-to-day basis. So therefore, there was a great degree of empathy that started creeping in. From a performance standpoint, interestingly, it became a great equalizer, right? So those corridor conversations were not happening. People were not going out and meeting separately. Everything was happening on Zoom. Everything was happening on work. So your actual task-related performance became something that shone much more than the fact that you had a network or you could build relationships or you could manage to navigate the matrix of the organization. So, while the struggle continues, don't get me wrong, we do feel that in many ways, the virtualization of work has caused a couple of things. There's recognition of the struggle that women have. It's become much more real. I think women have reached a point where they've said, I need help. So they ask their spouses for help. They set meetings up later in the day. They tell their supervisors they can't join discussions because they have 1, 2, 3, 4 things to do. And erstwhile days, if a woman had done that, the supervisor may have judged. But today, that supervisor is not judging with the same lens as he or she would have judged maybe 6 months ago or 7 months ago. So that's something to consider, that there has been a shift in balance in the way people are viewing, or the way work type is viewing the gender equation, which is a good thing, and I hope it continues once we move away from the work from home and eventually get back to our offices. It would be really sad to think that this sense of empathy has only lasted as long as the pandemic has.
Empathetic leadership is here to stay, Lavanya. There's people like you absolutely rah-rahing it out there. And many companies are, I think, actually adopting it, right, as a way of a cultural shift or a cultural improvement.
We have something, it's a tool called Amber, and it's really quite fantastic, right? So it goes out there and it reaches out to employees and it just asks them how they're feeling. It's an AI based tool, so the conversation sort of flows in the way you're directing it. And it comes back and it tells me, and I'll tell you, when I open my email in the morning, I get a report that says 2 people of your team you need to speak to because they're not doing well for whatever reason that may be. It could be personal, it could be professional, it could be anything. But the need for engagement has increased, and on for everyone.
That's really wonderful. So, Aradhana, can we hear from you from the World Health Program? How does it work to balance it better in your experience?
World Food Program. So,
or personal, actually. We love to hear personal stories.
Yeah, well, personally, it hasn't been much of a difficulty because I'm a single woman and I do have my parents with me and they've been very sweet. They let me be with my laptop and in my room for most of the day. And in the evening, when I emerge out, they have 100 stories to tell me about how they've been bickering with each other through the day. But that's about it. But yes, what we have been hearing from my colleagues, and we've had these occasional, meetings with our staff counselor who's based in Bangkok, and she arranges these discussions with staff to see that whether workflow is going smoothly, whether there are any mental issues or any coordination issues or anything. But then every staff has been sharing that though there has been an increased level of stress because of the multiple responsibilities that they now need to juggle with along with their work. So it's like home and work at the same space. But yet there is, as Lavanya had shared, this greater realization also that, the amount of responsibility that is there. There is an appreciation of the different roles and there is a mutual sharing, which has really helped. And so I think in the long run, it has kind of led to a change in work modes, but I wouldn't say that it has been negative. There are a lot of positivities to it as well. And so it's been mentally we have had to adjust, but then the adjustment has not necessarily been a very difficult journey.
That's great to hear, because actually we run a program called Mother-in-Law Management. Can you believe it? We actually title it Mother-in-Law Management, and we offer it no-cost webinars to all the people that will have us, because that's a topic we don't talk about culturally in our country, right? We hope that brushing it under the carpet will work, but it doesn't. And you're talking about that sandwich generation, actually, Aradhana, where you're saying that, you have to also manage the elders who have become teenagers again. And so managing all of that, and how do we do it? How do we manage that sandwich generation? By speaking up is what you're all saying, by asking for what you need and seeking that support that maybe pre-COVID women did less of. And now we're helpless. We need your help. Can you help here? And so we're doing that, right? Kritika, do you have a story to share on this?
Absolutely. I think one important thing that we all have to realize is the moment, from the urban side I'm talking, the moment we all stepped into the working world, the business world, work-life balance was always a topic that was coming up. We always had to manage the work from home and also at work in the workplace. But it has kind of significantly increased in terms of the responsibilities during this pandemic, because one, you're stuck at home. And the 6-7 hours or 8 hours that you're outside, which was otherwise managed by someone at home or outside, is all added as an added responsibility. It is not like being a woman. Yes, we are a superwoman. We can manage responsibilities, but we are still a human being that we need to accept beyond the point we cannot. And we ask for it. As everybody was saying, and just to piggyback on that, we started asking for it. That is one great improvement that we have seen from all the women, is like, enough is enough. Now I need help. I need help. That's it. Whoever it is, whether it's at the workplace, colleagues, or is it at home, your husband or your parents or your in-laws, whoever it is at home, or your kids. And the biggest challenge that has been adding, being a mother of a 7.5-year-old child, I know this school not having being in physical present is definitely a major, because you are now playing a role of a teacher, because we also see most of the teachers also struggling, because there's only that much they also can do online. So you end up teaching more at home. So we need to spend that much of time. What we were doing post in the evening, now we have to do even during the day. The homeworks have to be ensured. The small things. Have you submitted the homework? Have you taken the photo clearly? We need to keep reminding. On one side, I don't want her to touch the digital mode. The other side, I'm like, I only have to remind you on the homework, But sometimes it just goes on. And the other factor is you're doing all of this and you have no one to go out and talk with this social distancing. Hopefully it started off recently, at least we started meeting friends. The 7-8 months you were not meeting people, you were hearing all kind of negative news. It just added a huge burden on your mental strength. A woman is stronger by mentally, physically, emotionally, but beyond a point, it was draining. It's like, how long is it going to be like this? This was actually adding a strain. But the lot of significant improvement in the men folks that we have seen is, yes, they've started acknowledging that these small work are a huge task and we need to support. And yes, like Susan saying, I have a very supportive husband who has taken a break from his work, of course, for his health reasons, but he doesn't sit, he sweeps, when the maid was not here, Susan, apologies, because in India, we still have the culture of somebody else coming and supporting on the house chore work. So when they were not coming for 5-6 months, okay, you sweep the floor, I mop the floor. That kind of a split was happening, and he cooks much better than me. So I keep the rice, and you make the sabji, or you do whatever it is. He started enjoying talking to his mother and on the phone and learning new stuff to cook. So this really helped. I comb her hair and he give her a bath. We split literally all the work, and I am lucky, but this is not the scenario in the rural side. And I talk to a lot of helpers who come here. Some of them, things have gone worse. The people are like, they're not able to go out and they're not able to drink outside because all your wine shops are shut shop, and they're like, the abusiveness has increased. You have one side of story like this. On the other side, urban men have started understanding and appreciating what women have to do, and there's a good lending of support. It's just that how do we make the same thing happen on the other side of the part, because that's a huge sect of people. It's they represent majority in the population, and we are trying to work. We are trying to talk to those men and explain to them, how this is important. We have started some community services kind of a thing, but a long way to go.
So in CSR, I'm thinking, Lavanya, I know that you try to apply the gender lens in CSR, and the topic that Kritika has brought up for us about extra abuse going on, physical or mental, now in the current situation. Is there something you do there in that area with a gender lens?
So, so just to give you a perspective on how GenPact looks at things, right? We try to look at it. I mean, ultimately, we're a process-driven company, right? And that's what we do, whether it's for our clients, and we try to take that expertise into the sector as well. Reason being is we don't want to pretend to know as much as a not-for-profit or a charity does about the work that they're doing. We clearly don't. Their on-ground understanding of the challenges on hand would be at any point on any given day far greater than anything that we would be able to allude to. Having said that, what we believe we can bring and the value that we can bring is process, metrics, measurement. How do you see that you're definitively making a difference, and how do you measure that difference, on a day-to-day basis to really see whether you're driving that outcome that you began, that was your vision. So I think in this area, one of the things that we're working with our partners on is really the education on both perspectives. What we tend to do in the gender lens is talk to women and say, stand up for your rights,
Yeah.
find financial independence, push back. But almost in some ways, it's unfair to do that because they're in a society that's not respecting them or appreciating them, standing up for themselves, pushing back. It's in fact feeding more aggression and more abuse their way. So actually, the community that we need to work with is the male community, for them to recognize the value of their female counterpart, to change that thinking in children, so that when they look at their mothers and their sisters and their wives, there is a different way in which they start viewing the world. So look, this is not a short journey. It's not going to end in one workshop or two workshops, but you're trying to drive systemic change. So if you're going to try to drive systemic change, it has to work both ways. You have to attack the generation above and you have to attack the generation below. And you can't leave it only to the woman to try and drive that systemic change. We talk about equal partnerships, right? So if say 60% of the population is not with you, what will that 40% drive at the end of the day, right? You're talking to yourself and your own kind about the same stuff. So our view is to try and look at it more holistically, to take a more overarching view. The journey will be slow. It will take a little bit more time. It will be much more long-lived in reality.
And Susan, would you like to chime in on this topic?
Yes, and thank you for that, because I think that, you know, much as we have the positive stories to tell, there is the other side of being locked down with family members who are under stress. You know, so some of the cracks that may have been visible before sort of widen and open, and you know, we know that actually globally there's our executive director in UN Women labels it the shadow pandemic, which travels along with the pandemic, really, which increases the level of domestic violence and gender-based violence because of this, the stress between families, and that sort of builds on the power differences between men and women also. So it's really essential, I think, for you know, services for those women to still be operating as really important essential services, and also the changing norms between men and women is also really critical. And for that, I completely agree with, you know, other speakers that we have to engage with men who need to also talk to other men about these things, because it's not, you know, it's not just up to women to change. Actually, it is up to men to be partners in that change. So, and there is some really great work that's been happening around the world with norm changes, and I also agree that there's this multi-leveled approach that needs to happen where children see different kinds of families as they grow up, where, you know, schools educate children about the issues as well. And I believe in India that a lot of curriculum does deal with gender, which I think is extraordinary and wonderful. And then it's also, you know, governments putting funding into services and creating rules and laws that protect survivors of this kind of violence. Mm-hmm. So you really need that multi-pronged approach, I think, for protection and also social change.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, gender intelligence as a subject should now come into our colleges and workplaces and needs to become a curriculum. That's the mission and vision of Global Adjustments Foundation. We're trying to do that as Champion Women because we've developed a curriculum. I had the pleasure of learning from the Western world that there are actually neurological differences, gender specific. And if we understood those differences, when I had the privilege of interviewing John Gray, a friend who wrote about Mars and Venus, he talks very clearly now about 8 habits to change, right? And the change, women have to be aware, right, first of these changes, because we take it for granted. We have a blind spot. They're just like me. So we tend to go and approach the issue like we would with another woman on the team. But actually, we need to maybe communicate strategically so that we get the desired result. And I think Aradhana, this would work for the grassroots levels or Kritika at the rural level. If we teach that in Tamil, for instance, right here in Tamil Nadu, and we can tell them, don't go and raise the rah-rah bar when they're watching their favorite cricket game. That's not when you're going to get the right response.
True.
Find the other right time when you're able to make a point. And so there are just these nice topics, right? So while all of you are supporting education, I just like to ask you a question about technology. I know that technology has been a boon in this pandemic. Imagine if this had happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, right? But women don't have the same access to technology. We have scholars whom we put through college, and none of those girls have a tablet or a laptop to work with. They're all with these tiny phones and studying a college degree through a little screen like that. So what do we do to make sure that more women are empowered with technology? And maybe I start with Lavanya, coming from that field, and then ask each of you if you have a suggestion how to improve our lot there.
So it's especially, in the social sector space, you're absolutely right. The hit that it's given education for women, I mean, not just women, for everyone, has been terrible. And for girls and women, particularly worse, because the priority for most households in India becomes the education of the boy. So one of the things that we're trying to do is try to, ultimately the issue is access to data and access to a device, right? It boils down to those two things. And that's what we're trying to bridge, at least where we're working, and the communities that we're supporting, is to create that access to data and access to devices, at least per household. And we have a very strong push with all our programs as far as gender is concerned. But it sounds good, but the problem is so huge and the problem is so vast that there's so much to be done. I mean, a few hundred or even a few thousand tablets or laptops or data cards is not going to do anything for what we need to do as far as the education sector is concerned. I mean, I think a couple of things that we should all start thinking about is how do we really enable these households to continue with education? I mean, Kritika, you were talking about how we have to, support our children with have they done their homework, have they done their reading, etc. But we're talking about families where many of these children are first-time literates in their families. There is no one to care whether they're doing their homework, not doing their homework, whether they're attending class, not attending class. I mean, WhatsApp video and YouTube is hardly the way, to learn. And then you have teachers also who are uncomfortable with technology because they've never had to use it before. Facilitating virtually versus facilitating in a classroom are two fundamentally different things. And at the end of the day, a 5-year-old is a 5-year-old with a specific attention span, as is a 10, 12, 14, 15-year-old. So we're almost the pressure on this sector is huge. And we do need to, and I don't think anyone has the answer, quite honestly, we do need to really all put our heads together and drive a concerted effort in terms of, if this is going to last another 12 months or 16 months or 24 months, we can't continue on this ad hoc, sort of band-aid scotch tape solution basis at which we're functioning right now.
Yeah. So we should just now go for a final question to each one of you, I think. And I'd love for you to share your own champion woman mantra in leadership. What has been your own leadership as a very successful woman leader, that a truth that you live by, maybe, that has led to your success, so that our viewers here, whether they're women or men that are very obviously supporting women, what would be your leadership mantra that you could share with us? We can start with Kritika.
Absolutely. So just before talking about the mantra, on the previous point in terms of the technology, yes, a lot of effort have to go in terms of, one, access to the technology, and the second, of course, many NGOs are doing on the skill development. How we kind of developed our product offering also is that while the work is going on improving the literacy levels of this digital literacy level at the user level, we made a product more assisted model, because smartphone itself is not much available when you go a little rural, let alone the digital literacy. So can we have a product that could be used by the normal feature phone, or there could be one member in the family or nearby using a smartphone? So we adopted the agent assisted model, where one person goes and assists them onboarding, and then it's pretty easy for them to just press the number on the phone and find out the details. As an extension of that, how we made those women also self-reliant is we introduced, especially in the COVID, it was more relevant, was Kaleido Assist. As the name indicates, in Tamil Nadu, we call Kaleido Sahodari. In North, we call Kaleido Saheli, to relate to their language. Is each woman, they are the best influencers in the world. You teach something to them, they are the best to influence more women into it. So one person is already saving with us and seeing the benefit. Influence other women in your community. They acted like our community touch points. We have, in fact, over 1,000 people in the last 3-4 months, already the touch points. On one side, their savings is not affected. They also earn commission. They're also earning money while their jobs are not there by referring other people, because this is a platform that helped them. It kind of made them more confident, influential, self-reliant, and a community touch point model is what we kind of grew upon, built the entire solution around it. And that is the main focus area for us, given the next couple of years is going to be challenging with this COVID and on and off social distancing, and this impact is going to be a little longer. And on the mantra for champion women leadership, I think something which I followed, and I believe it is may not be very simple. We need to put in a lot of effort to bring this, but one is to stay positive and grounded. When I say, what I mean is that as a woman, I keep saying that we are the gifts of the God. We have all the power to become an achiever. Whatever we do, whether we have to accept being a mother or playing multiple avatars. I know we can achieve in everything, but we need to accept, go a little back, like 1 step back and 2 steps forward. Accept that all cannot happen on one day. We need to start accepting that. Sometimes we just work too much like a superwoman, and without realizing our health is taking a toll. Let's just accept all cannot happen in one day. Whatever you do, prioritize. Start prioritizing, learn to prioritize what is important for that moment. Focus on that. By doing this, I think you will get also support from your folks around. Family play a very important role. You can't just say, I will do everything just with me. I need my family support for me to do something. I need to focus on my physical health. For me, fitness is important. For me, meeting people is important. For me, my daughter is important. Everything you just focus and plan. And, at every stage, you need the support and have that gratitude, give back. Throughout your journey from your birth till wherever you are, you have had multiple situations in your life, and different people have taught in different, indirectly or directly. Just start giving back, acknowledge and give back. Sometimes we just miss out to have that gratitude, somewhere it's there, but we don't bring it. Get a practice, stay grounded, stay positive, and keep loving. I mean, that kind of a commitment, that's something which eventually, I think we will become a superwoman in every term, We're not just thinking, we will, and we are, I think these are some of the important factors, and I have learned it, I practiced it. It's not something which just came naturally. We need to forego a lot of self-ego, sometimes. Yes, I need help. I need to ask. All this came because of this only. You ask only when you feel, okay, I need to accept the fact that I can't do everything. Take help, but eventually you will do it. That kind of a satisfaction was good.
Thank you, Kritika. Thank you. Susan, can we hear your leadership mantra?
Okay, so I think for me, often it's about, well, I have sort of followed my passion. I've found I want to, like Kritika, I think I want to contribute to making the world a better place. I'm passionate about women's equality. So I've gradually found myself ways that I can do that within my work. I'm a privileged woman, so not everyone, of course, gets that opportunity, but I've worked at finding those opportunities. And then lastly, often if I'm facing a challenge, I will say to myself, I can do this as well as anyone else, if not better. So that sort of self-talk, because often I think as women, we immediately approach things with, I can't do it, or it's too big, how am I going to cope? But I think that self-talk of I can do it as well as anyone else has kind of helped me address some of those challenges that are frightening.
Wonderful. Thank you, Susan. Aradhana?
Thanks, Ranjini. So leadership mantra for me would be fairness and with firmness. So the fact that what I'm talking about when I'm talking about gender equality, I know I'm being fair and I'm being, with justice, or I'm really being in the right. And I know the other persons whom I'm trying to convey this message to somewhere do realize it. And as Lavanya had mentioned, we do somewhere strike their conscience. And so we know that we are conveying the right message. So we have to really face the, the kind of complex responses that we get. There is a lot of resistance. There is a lot of argument. There is a lot of mansplaining. There is a lot of, there is a lot of one doesn't take it directly, or simply that okay, there's something, this is coming from a woman, is it coming about giving equal space to women. So there are these multiple challenges in actually reaching that message out to people and ensuring that it then gets operationalized. So the mantra basically is, to stay fair and to stay firm, and that you're fair, and so eventually you will get there. So that's in a nutshell. And Ranjini, I have to leave now. So thank you so much for this opportunity. It was wonderful interacting with all of you. And I really hope I get this opportunity once again soon. Thank you so much.
We're going to take only 2 more minutes. Can you wait just 2 minutes to say bye-bye together? We just have to listen to dear Lavanya.
Okay,
Give us
sure.
2 minutes.
So for me, it's really two things, right? And it's I guess a synopsis of what both Susan and Kritika have talked about already. So one is, why do we have boundaries? Just remove those boundaries from your mind. It takes a lot of time, effort, and practice as you have those self conversations. But remove those boundaries and try. The other thing is, and I think this is a much more important one, is forgive yourself. You can't be 100% at everything all of the time. So sometimes your family will be up, work will be down, it's okay. Sometimes work will be up, family will be down, it's okay. Sometimes you will be up and everything else will be down, and that's okay too. So it's just important to take a step back and say, it's okay, a day at a time. I can't be perfect at everything, and no one expects me to be. A lot of this is emotional tax I've actually put on myself. I'll never forget this, and this is a big turning point in my life. When my daughter was little, I told my husband one day that I was about to have a nervous breakdown because I couldn't take it anymore. There's just much to do between her and work and this and that and the other. He said, I don't think you realize how controlling you are. You don't want to let go of the control on anything. You want to do it yourself. I'm happy to do it. So tell me, what are the 5 tasks you want me to do? And I'm there to do it. But if you keep trying to do it while I'm trying to do it, then it's not going to work. I'm happy to back off then and let you do it. So it's literally about that. Recognize somewhere that it's not just about the outside, it's about you as well. You have to let go, and you have to be comfortable with small imperfections, or at least not things being done the way you would necessarily do them.
That's just wonderful. We're all guilty of controlling.
Absolutely.
If you have to get to where we are, we want to control life. Anyway, Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you all together, because it's nice to have the screen open with all the wonderful faces of leaders and role models that I see in all of you, that I know Goodera and Karma Summit will carry forward through the recording to the world. Can you imagine? There'll be thousands, who knows, millions of women who will be able to see this and listen to your stories. Thank you for doing this. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you. I read an Australian mathematician recently who says that all the coronavirus in the world can be fitted on a teaspoon. Seriously? And that's what's disrupting our lives? I mean,
Amazing.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? So
yeah.
I want to go back to the ancient Indian wisdom and end this seminar with the beautiful faith that we've always had in India. India has provided faith to the world, irrespective of what else the world has taken from us. And we've always said the peace prayer 3 times. We've said the word Shanti 3 times. But many of us in India do it as a ritual, and sometimes we really don't know why. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Why do we do it 3 times? I don't know. because the first Shanti is to say, please give me peace from nature. And this little coronavirus sitting in a teaspoon and infecting 53 million people is the one that needs to give us that first Shanti. The second Shanti, we say it to say, I want peace from people around me. And the third Shanti is, even if world and nature and people are fine, I need peace in my own mind. And that's why we say it 3 times. So please join me. It's perfectly good protocol to put your 2 palms together and touch them. And please join me as we say Shanti, Shanti, Shanti 3 times for all our viewers, for Goodera, for Karma Summit, and for our own families. Go ahead. Shanti.
Shanti.
Shanti. Shanti.
Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.